and welcome to Adventures in Local Marketing from BrightLocal, the marketing podcast for marketers who want to do good local SEO. In the upcoming episodes, I'll be chatting with a smorgasbord of marketers who each bring their unique insight into the local marketing landscape. And each episode, we're going to serve up a one-stop overview of our guest's chosen topic area. And it's going to offer you tips and tactics that you'll be able to dash off and implement right away, as well as offer insights that are going to get your brain cogs whirring. I'm your host, I'm Claire Carlisle, and I'm BrightLocal's local search expert, as well as a chartered marketer with 20 years of experience of working with local businesses of all shapes and sizes. And today we are going to be chatting with my very lovely friend, Crystal Carter. Hello, Crystal, and welcome to the show.
Hello. Hi.
Hello. It's so nice to have you here today. And first of all, I want to say something special to you. And that is, thank you for being an absolute powerhouse when it comes to sharing information and putting together excellent content and decks that you share with us all, and for sharing all of your knowledge so freely and widely. So I just wanted to say thank you for that.
That's really kind of you. I think the same of you. So thank you so much. I think that as SEOs, sometimes I've been with other SEOs and out in the world, and someone said, "Oh, do you work together?" And it's like, it kind of feels like you kind of do, even if you don't work in the same team, because we're like all trying to solve the same problem. So, sharing is caring. And yeah, that's what it's about.
I think that's in part why we've got such a nice community, isn't it? I guess, in that we're working, pretty much towards the same goals a lot of the time, especially when it comes to like, maybe it's a bit soaring to call it education, but I'm always educating myself, and I hope that like the stuff that I produce is going to be useful to another marketer or business owner down the road.
Yeah, I mean, we do our best. That's the idea, and I think also like, you want to make sure that when you're creating content, when I create content, I want to make sure that somebody can do something with it afterwards, because I'm somebody who likes to go, but now what do I do? What do I do about that? If someone just gives me information and they're just like, hey, the tap is running, and I'm like, like, do you want me to fix that? Or do you need help? Or did you fix it? Or, you know what I mean? Like, if somebody gives me information, what am I doing with that information? So I think it's really important to make things actionable for people, because like, yeah, one of the things I love about SEO is that it's a bit like a puzzle. There's an answer somewhere. Like, you've just got to find it. So
it's almost like we wrote that as a segue into what we're talking about today, really. But actionable, getting stuff done. I love a bit of strategy and a little bit of theorizing, but really what I want to know is, how do I fix it and how do I make it work? So today we are going to be talking about schema markup, and more specifically schema management and schema validation. So what it is, who should use it, how we should use it, how we check it, how we make sure it's written correctly, and all of those things. My schema journey is sort of goes back to, writing local business schema, some product schema, person schema, event schema, lots of different bits and bobs. Where did you start? Where did you start using schema, and why were you using it?
So I would probably take this back. The first time I ever encountered schema, I was writing a recipe blog, just for fun. This was my way back in the day. And I had been writing a recipe blog, and then Google changed around. They were like, we have this new thing that you have to use. And I was like, huh? And I looked at this and I was like, that's too complicated for me. Like, when you're like, I'm tapping out. Like, it's just like, what is this? No, absolutely not. And this was years and years and years ago. And I was like, I don't understand. This hurts my brain. I just wanted to write about like how to make cookies, and I don't understand why I have to put all these things in this thing like this. And then later on, and I sometimes have that response to new things just generally, which is just like, what is this and why? So I had that experience, and then years later on, like working with clients, we had a situation where basically Google for Jobs, the jobs board came in. I remember we had a client who was working recruitment, and they were ranking, but they weren't getting any clicks. And it was like, what is this? And then we looked at it, and I was like, oh, we have to be doing this. Like, we have to do this. This is non-negotiable. We have to update this for that. And so I got right into it, and it was brilliant. After that, I was hooked. After that, I was like, why aren't we using this? And I was like, oh wait, like when you get into schema.org and you get into the actual documentation, there's so much there, and there's so many different types and so many different ways to categorize information. And it's also precisely the kind of way that I like to get information. So I like to get information like essentially in a spreadsheet, which is essentially kind of what Schema Markup does. It kind of basically like spreadsheeterizes the content of your website. It's like, what are we making? Cookies? What's in them? Eggs, milk, like chocolate, sugar, etc. Okay, what are the instructions? This, and this. What diets does it suit? That, and that. Where like, so it just pulls in all the attributes, and it is one of my favorite. It's my favorite thing. I think I've done some schema stuff on different projects within Wix, and someone was like, on this particular project, someone was like, oh, isn't it amazing? I was like, I'm not amazed. It always works. Like, I'm like, if you don't have it and you do add it, like, you normally see an uplift of some sort. And no, it's not a ranking factor. Schema is not a ranking factor. If anyone's listening, no, it is not a ranking factor. However, what you find sometimes with Schema Markup, like I found with this job situation, was that it's not a ranking factor, but it is a factor that makes you eligible for different elements on the SERP, which rank. And the element itself, like the jobs board, ranks at the top. They always put the jobs board at the top. So if you're not in the jobs board, then you aren't going to be at the top. And it doesn't matter whether you're number one if the whole top is taken up with the jobs board or the recipe cards or the event carousel or the image carousel or the whatever it is. So it's not a ranking factor, but it makes you more eligible for more things. It's just like, you don't have to go to college to do there's lots of jobs where you don't have to go to college to do that job. You don't have to go to college to be a marketing manager, for instance. However, there are some jobs where they won't even give you an interview if you don't have a college degree sometimes. So of course you could go your own path and do whatever you want to do. And of course, however, you're giving yourself more options if you meet certain qualifications and if you're meeting certain things. So, and in some verticals, it's pretty much non-negotiable. Like I said, in jobs, you absolutely should do that. If you have an event website, you absolutely should do that. If you're doing products, absolutely. Local business markup, you absolutely should do that as well. It's super useful and super valuable. And there's a few other ones where it's really like mission critical. And if you're in that space and you're not using Schema Markup, you kind of should.
Do you know what, Crystal? Something tells me that you kind of love Schema.
I love Schema.
She loves Schema. You heard it here first. You didn't actually. You heard it lots of other places first. But Crystal loves Schema. So, right, moving on from that. We are going to start at the very beginning, like Julie Andrews. It's a very good place to start. So you're going to tell me, if you will, why schema management and schema validation is important.
Okay, so we talked about the Schema Markup and why Schema Markup itself is important. A lot of people think this is a set it and forget it thing, and sometimes there's certain elements to it, but where it can be, like if your business address isn't going to change, you probably don't need to update that again. And if it's valid, then that's cool. However, there are certain things that happen that mean that you need to go back in after you've done it. Let's say you've done it and you set up your schema and you like did an audit and you added in all of the different elements. 6 months down the line is a good chance to literally set it on your calendar. Just go through and check and make sure that everything's good. Also, it's worth checking and making sure that Google will give you recommendations. Like they'll give you warnings, and I've written an article and I will link to it in the show notes, I'm sure, called about structured data validation. And the reason why I wrote this article is because people panic at the warnings, but you don't have to panic at the warnings necessarily, right? So they're not, the warnings aren't necessarily something where you should be like, oh no, everything's wrong. Sometimes the warnings are just general recommendations of things that you could do should do, maybe might consider. And sometimes there are things that you probably might as well do. And sometimes there are things that you could do if you have the time. And but if not, like, don't worry about it, or they're not even relevant to you at all. So that's something to think about. But I used to get people who would be like, oh, I have all these warnings and what do I do? And and I'd be like, no, don't worry, it's fine. You're fine. It's valid. It's parsing, that's fine. But then I also see people who would see that it was valid on one thing, and then they wouldn't see that it was valid on another thing, or they'd look on Google Search Console and they'd be like, oh, I can't see the schema that we put in. And I'd be like, yeah, because Google doesn't give you all of the enhancements reports. So there's a lot of confusion around it, around the validation process. And so I wrote an article about it because and it's very nerdy. And I got some fantastically wonderful nerdy people to contribute to the article as well, who are also people who love schema as well. So do check that out. But yeah, that's the reason why I brought it up. And also, like, for instance, with Wix, we have a lot of schema that's built into our platform. So if you create an event using the events tool in Wix, then it will have event schema markup built into it. If you have a product, then it will have product schema markup built into it. But what's important to remember is that we also carry out this management task. So we keep an eye on which things are becoming new from Google's rich results validation. We keep an eye on which things are changing, and we make sure that we're keeping those things fresh, and it's something that we monitor regularly and that we refresh regularly. So for instance, when I first joined Wix, which was back in 2022, when I first joined the team, not long after I joined the team, Google changed around their criteria for products. So they used to just include the main product image as part of the rich results for products. And then they added in the additional images as well. Well, we already had schema markup for all of the additional images across all of our products. So all of those things were already valid. So that's cool, and that's useful to know. Sometimes I've had it before where Google will just change the names that they use. So sometimes they'll change it so that it's not person, it's name, it's not author, but it's name. Do you remember? Have you seen those where they just change?
You just get muddled sometimes. It's like you're saying, because we're marketers, we're business owners, we're running agencies, whatever we're doing, we're busy. There's 1,000,001 jobs. What will happen to us if we don't do this management and validation? What's the worst case scenario, do you think, for a business that isn't doing this process?
So if you don't have a regular process for going through and checking and making sure that everything is still valid, like sometimes the things just won't show anymore. So and it could be, and it also depends on how your schema is configured. So sometimes people are doing these things dynamically, and you will be reliant on a dynamic field. And let's say you change around your web page and the field doesn't exist anymore. Well, if the field doesn't exist anymore and doesn't have the author name, and let's say the schema, for instance, depends, like it's only valid if you have the author name, for instance, then that can be something that can make it break. Also, curly quotation marks can break things as well.
Yes.
So exactly. So I've had it before where I was like, we have this, I put in the schema and it's not working, and how come, and blah blah blah, and we did all these different tests, and I was like, it's quotations. They were like, what? I was like, we put quotation marks in the copy on the page, and so then it thinks like, this is the thing, no, this is the string, and it's like, no. We have to use different quotation marks in the copy than in the schema. So these are things that you have to check as well. So yeah, you will have content that won't show in the way that it's supposed to. And if you have schema that's dependent on other schema, then sometimes it can have a knock-on effect. So yeah, it's important to schedule time to review your markup and make sure that it's working well. And it's also really useful to go through and just double check what things are now rich results and not now rich results. So in the last few months, Google has changed around their recommendations, or the information around like how to markup and FAQ markup. It's not that it's not valid anymore. It's not that it doesn't exist anymore, but they're not going to be prioritizing it as much anymore because SEOs were having too much fun
we broke
with it.
it.
This is why we can't have nice things. So basically, they're changing that around because everyone was like, "This is great! You get so much space on the SERP." Those were the good old days. But it doesn't mean that FAQs aren't still useful, and it doesn't mean that you shouldn't mark them up. And like really with FAQs, you should add them in when people are actually frequently asking you questions. So like on the Wix Learning Hub, we have a monthly webinar, and every single time we do the webinar, people go, "Is it recorded? Is it being recorded? Will I get the recording later? Will I do the thing?" So on the FAQs, I was like, please, can we write in the FAQs, yes, it is being recorded. Yes, you will get emailed. Yes, it will be on YouTube. Those sorts of things, because we were genuinely frequently getting asked those questions. And if you're having those questions frequently asked in your team, on your website, in your business, then yeah, of course, add those in. And add the schema markup. Google will read it anyway. They might not show it, with the bright green arrows or whatever on the SERP, but they will read it and they will understand it. And it will also help Google to understand the content across the rest of your site, which is the other great thing about schema.
So I'm guessing that if you're not checking your schema regularly, you haven't validated it, you're not checking that everything is okay, then I guess that if you are keeping an eye on your sort of click-through rate or how much traffic is coming in on a certain page, you could be sort of diagnosing a traffic drop. And then sometimes that is because, we don't have these rich features anymore because our product schemas stopped working. Or,
Right.
You don't know until unless you're actually looking at the SERPs.
Yeah.
You're just like, why haven't we got any traffic to this? Because it doesn't look like it used to look like.
Right. Precisely.
Yeah.
And sometimes it can be like under the hood. So it could be that somebody added another element or something, or somebody did something in the back end that particularly if your schema is dynamically generated, if somebody has, switched something off on the back end or changed something in the back end, or, just, syntax errors. So in the article that I have there, I go through some of the syntax errors, and there are a few different tools that you can use to diagnose syntax errors. I list off a couple. I have a whole table full of of different places where you can validate them, and I think it's really important to validate your schema across a couple of tools because they all have different criteria. So, for instance, validator.schema.org is pretty forgiving, really. It will give you, it will be like, yeah, that's great. And I'm like, there's 2 commas on the end of that. And they're like, that's fine. Like, whatever. Like they're very much like your mom. Like, they're just like, yeah, honey, that's great. Well done.
If you've got a nice mom, yeah.
Right. Claire's like, I'm not nice like that. If my kid shows me terrible syntax, I'm like, what is this?
That's it. This is the end. Yeah.
Right? Disavow. No. No. I think also but I use test.schema.dev. They'll let you get away with anything. If there's anything out of order, they're like, no, like, not okay. Like, do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Like, go home, try again. Yeah. Within Wix, we have a couple of different validator tools, and also like, no, like, they don't take, you can't put in janky schema on there, and they'll just be like, it's not right. And you're like, what? And they're like, it's not right. It's not okay. Yeah. So
we don't want permissive validation. We want validation, which is going to be like Google saying, yes, this is correctly written, and we are happy to potentially show the rich features.
Right. But I think people get really confused though, because they go to the rich results tool and they're like, I don't see the schema that I put in, and I'm like, guys, because it's different. It's different.
Yes.
It's a different.
That's my question for you.
Yeah.
That's my question for you. Is like you Google schema. Check schema markup, and then you get to the page and it gives you 2 tools. So what is the difference between those 2 tools? How does someone go and use both of those tools effectively?
So the rich results testing tool is testing for Google's rich results. They're not testing for schema validation. They're not testing of whether or not it's valid on schema.org. They're testing of whether or not it might give you a rich result, will make you eligible for a rich result on Google. So you can very, very well see some of the stuff that is valid, but you might not see all of the schema that's valid across your page. Whereas if you go to validator.schema.org, for instance, they will tell you all of the schema that is valid across on that page that you're looking at. And so that's really, really useful to understand. And if you're in like the Google Search Console URL inspection tool, they'll give you similar results to the rich results testing tool. So it's important to understand like what the criteria are for your testing. Bing has also has a great tool, particularly for testing across like site-wide. So you can see site-wide schema for different page types across Bing, and they pull up everything, not just stuff that's valid for rich results. I mean, they have rich results. I can't remember if they call them rich results, but they also have, you know, those sorts of features on their page as well.
On Bing, is that a tool that exists for everyone, or is that part of your Bing Webmaster Tools?
That's in Bing Webmaster Tools. Yeah, I've not seen one that's one that you can just log into. I think they probably just rely on validator.schema.org. But yeah, it's a useful tool, particularly if you're trying to get site-wide schema, because site-wide schema validation is very different from single page schema validation. Yeah, it's really, really useful. On a single page, one of the other ones that I use really often is Christina Azarenko's SEO Pro extension. We love Christina.
Yeah,
big heart
we
to
do.
Christina.
Long time.
Yes. And yeah, so her tool is also like not that forgiving as well. So basically if you put the thing on there and you're like schema, and she's like, I don't see anything. And I'm like, what? And she's like, there's nothing here. And I'm like, okay, we're going to try this again. They're going to go back through it.
Is that separate to the Chrome plugin, or is that a separate tool?
No, that's in the Chrome plugin. So the SEO Pro extension is a Chrome plugin, and there's like lots of tabs. I use it all the time. I use it literally like 45 million times a day. And basically, I do. I used to just DM Christina, this is so good. Like, and she'd message, or I'd message her and I'd be like, yo, you added this new thing. And she's like, I haven't told everyone yet. I was like, but I found it because I use it all the time. Anyways, so yeah, so on that one, she tells you all of the things and also tells you like where they're nested in between. It's a really, really accessible tool. It's also really useful for showing clients like, look at what I did for you. You're welcome. I'm amazing. Enjoy.
That leads me on to a question I was going to ask you, which outfoxes me sometimes. Is there an easy way for you to explain like the whole, because you said some schema, if it changes, it can affect other schema. What is it about nesting? Because some of us find it quite easy to write, you know, a piece of schema, but then it gets to, and then you need to nest this within this, and you need to, that's where I get lost.
So one of the things that's useful, this is a great job for chatters, for ChatGPT. I'm just gonna throw that right out there. If you're like, I have this, and I've done it before, I have this schema type, I have that schema type, how do I nest them? And then it will do it for you, which is super useful. So top tip there, do not rely on ChatGPT exclusively for validating your schema markup, because they will tell you whatever you want to hear. If you're like, I want you to have this type and that type, they're like, sure, and they'll just invent types for you. So don't rely on it wholesale. However, if you have a validation process and you're able to validate whatever it spits out, and you're also able to check any URLs and make sure that it doesn't rewrite any of the copy fields or whatever, it can be useful. But in terms of nesting, it's a question of understanding the dependencies. There are a couple of different tools that you can use to understand the dependencies. So you can say, so for instance, like a service level business for like a local SEO, and actually BrightLocal has a fantastic article with some schema markup examples, and including a service level business. Like if you're somebody who provides I don't know, carpet cleaning or something, and you serve, let's say you provide carpet cleaning and you serve Reading, but you're based in London, for instance, then you would say, this is a service level business, so we provide this service, and that would be the top thing, and then the service is provided by, and then you would add local business. So there'll be a way that it goes, that it sort of waterfalls into it. So the local business, which is owned by, which was founded by, which was like that sort of thing. So there'll be a way that it sort of waterfalls into it in a way that makes sense. And a lot of times, there are ways that you can make sure that it's more concise by using like node identifiers, which is where you have like at ID, and then you have like an ID for a particular piece of schema which you've used in another place, and so it might be that it just says like so like this service, let's say carpet cleaning, is provided by, and then it says organization, and then in the organization space you would have like the node identifier, and then let's say you have your organization information on a different page, then that would mean that you don't necessarily have to write all of that code again. It can crawl it to another space. So I think that it's a question of making sure that you have a good idea of how of the full scope of the schema, and also the full scope of your business architecture. So it's worth making sure that you've got some of those core pages. So things like having web page is really useful. Things like having your organization is really useful. And things like that. Making sure that your author pages have like bios and or contact pages have things like that, so that you can refer to them in some of these core pages.
I always like to hear a little mini rant at this point from our lovely guests. Something we call Room 404. So we like to get hold of something that we don't like, and we're either going to put it in an oubliette or chuck it away, or just basically just tell it to be quiet forever. So is there something in like SEO, marketing schema, it could be anything, that you want to immediately cancel and never hear from or about again?
Okay, so what I don't like is when people use the wrong URLs for their local business citations. And I know this is such a tiny, tiny, teeny, tiny, little tiny thing, but it drives me absolutely mad because it is such an easy win and it is such a senseless fail. Like, basically, if you have a website that's like www.fantasticbusiness.com, and that is your URL is www.fantasticbusiness.com, but on your Facebook page, you have fantasticbusiness.com without the dubs, that's going to do a little 301 redirect for no reason, right? And people do these things all the time. They put them on their Facebook, they put them on their Instagram, they share them here and there. They share them like, they'll be like, oh yeah, they'll put it on the like all of these different things. And like, I know it's only a little tiny redirect, but it makes direct traffic, which means that you're not able to see exactly where the thing came from. So you're messing up your attribution as well. So which messes up your data stuff as well. You're also like not concentrating all of the like energy from the traffic from those two things. It also reduces the information that you're able to get on the value of that particular channel. And like, it's such a simple thing. You don't have to be a technical genius. Like, you don't have to know anything about SEO to copy and paste the right URL. It is like not HTTP. If it's HTTPS, www, then use HTTPS, www, like, and also the trailing slash. If your URL doesn't have a trailing slash, don't put a trailing slash. Like, it's so simple.
It hurts my face to hear this. I can't even begin because no. It's such a bugbear for me, and it's just, you speak to a client and you're like, I've looked at your Instagram. I just wonder why you're not linking to the canonical homepage. We've copied and pasted it. It's in your document, which is your master documentation for everything. I just wondered why you wanted to strip out any referral information or, your UTM tags that I've helpfully added. We won't see any of that data, obviously, because anyway. So it physically pains me when I see that, because for me, it is, there's pain in my heart. Whereas for my client, they're like, well, it all goes to the same place.
No, it doesn't. I think the thing that drives me crazy is that, like, I sound like a crazy person, like, having to make this case about like three characters, like, but it does make a difference. And then it's like, yo, they'll say, well, this isn't working. It's like, I don't know if it did or didn't because you didn't do the thing that I asked you to. So I just need you to just copy and paste. And I think you very often find it on audits when you're like auditing internal links. That's like that bugbear number 2, possibly bugbear number 1 is internal redirects. I hate internal redirects. I cannot stand them. Like, it is a complete waste of time. And so you get like the ones where, like, let's say the URL used to be, or like the website used to be HTTP, then it's on HTTPS, and they've still got all the HTTP. Like, and don't get me wrong, like, I know why they happen, because oh my gosh, it's tedious to fix all of those links. It can be. However, fix it. Like, like, I understand what you're saying, but fix it. Also, like, it can have, there's so many, it's just link hygiene. Like, keep your links clean.
Keep everything clean. You should be the authority on yourself. If you are controlling a website because it's your website, or because you are controlling your social media and sending them back to your website, you control all of that. Google is looking to you to be authoritative. And if you can't even manage to add your own link, then I'm sorry, but no. We've got to get strict on this, basically. I love it. That's my favorite Room 404 ever. Basically, if I see that, I'm coming for you, basically. So on the subject of validation, we're going to talk about that in a moment, how to actually make sure that everything that we've written makes sense. But if we've got errors, you talked about this a tiny bit before, but what do we need to do? How do we fix them? What are we supposed to do?
Okay, so first of all, like, there are warnings sometimes that come up. Like, warnings, check them, don't panic. Check them, don't panic. You may or may not need to do the warning. Like, you may or may not need to sort out the warnings. Like, so, okay. So you have your parsing errors, which is basically where the schema won't even load. So you have to fix that because you're not even in the game then. You have your warnings where they're like, well, you should do this and you should do that, and no. And it's a little bit like, okay, maybe.
One day.
Check them. Yeah, check them and see. Errors, if you have an error, like, you pretty much have to fix that. Like, that needs to be addressed. So if Google Search Console is saying that you have an error, then that means you have to sort that out straight away. So in Validator and schema.org, you'll have certain errors, and you'll need to fix those just to be in the game. And then within Google Search Console, they'll also have other errors. And fixing the errors, like, might seem cumbersome sometimes, but like, if you're trying to be showing on like product schema markup, or if you're trying to be showing on event schema markup, or you're trying to be showing up on any of those things that yield rich results, like, it will actually absolutely be worth your while. There are lots of tools that you can do to help you see the errors overall. But one of the things that's great about schema is it's very often dynamically generated. So like I said, in Wix, we have page types. So we have like video schema. So if you use Wix video, then we have like video schema that's generated in a certain way. If you're using the events, if you're using the blogs, if you're using different things, the schema will be generated by folder. And if you're working on another website, then you can probably also generate it dynamically within your other CMS. So you can absolutely do that. And that means that if you have one error on your product page template, that you probably have it on all of your product page templates. Now, in one place you'd be like, oh no, that's terrible. Oh, that's so many products I have to fix. But probably the case is that you can just fix that in the code that one time. So it's probably that there's a syntax error or format error or something that's or a dependency or something that you need to fix. So if you see anything show up in the folder, and generally speaking in Google Search Console, they won't necessarily give you every single page. They'll give you examples of the page, especially if it's a giant website. They'll give you examples of pages that where they're seeing that error. So you need to fix those in order to get back to showing rich results. And the good thing about Google Search Console is they will tell you whether or not your rich results are valid and things like that. One of the other things that's important to remember in terms of rich results, particularly on the Google Search Console, is that they won't show them there if they're not being indexed. So you also have to make sure that all of those things that everything's being indexed. So if the pages aren't being indexed, then they can't show in rich results because Google doesn't know that they exist anyway. So there's like with tech SEO, there tends to be layers. It's like, are we being indexed? Great. fantastic. And actually there's in an article that I wrote for Moz, I talked about that as well. Like, make sure your sitemap is working, is dynamic, is functioning, etc. And then we can get into some of and make sure that the content is good, because obviously the schema is reflecting the content. If the content isn't there, then you can't put it in the schema.
Crystal, I am ready. We're all ready for what we'll call Crystal's helpful knowledge drop. What are you going to tell us about?
Okay, so my helpful knowledge drop, 5-point plan for validating schema thing. So first of all, always validate your schema on multiple tools. Never rely on a single tool. Never rely on a single source. It might be that you're doing like one page at a time, and then you're validating the whole folder via like a bigger tool, like Screaming Frog, or even SEMrush has a great schema markup tool, schema markup report. But yeah, never just use one tool. They all have different criteria. If you're valid on one, you might not necessarily be valid on all of them, but if you're valid on all of them, you're definitely valid. Like, so check multiple ones. And then ensure that you don't have any errors on Google Search Console. And as soon as you have any errors on Google Search Console, always fix them, especially like before they see more of the errors. Because as soon as they see errors, like that means that Google knows that you're not providing like the best value for customers, that there's an issue with yours. So make sure that you are error free on things. And then number 3 is don't panic about warnings. Don't panic. Check them, but don't panic. I've said this a few times, and the reason why is because I've seen so many people panic, and you probably don't have to. So check it, and also if you're a marketer, an SEO, and you're looking at these warnings, and let's say it's a great recommendation. Let's say it's saying like, oh, you should add this. Have a look at it and go, and you can take that to your team, and you can go, hey, Google recommends this. And you're like, what do you mean? You're like, look, here, it says if we do this. And also I would say it's worth checking those warnings. So if you see that the warning come up for something that's mission critical, like something like your products, then let's say you're an e-commerce site and you see a warning on the products, go into the documentation. There's a rich results gallery. If you go into that page, they have information about what is essential and what will get you certain points. So if the schema markup that you're using is really important to the competitiveness of your business, then you can go in there and you can see whether or not it will give you a certain element. The last time I did this again, like, and this is why you have to like constantly just check in and just keep checking the data, because they're constantly adding new types of schema. And therefore constantly adding new types of rich results and adapting the rich results, etc. So last time I checked this was like image schema markup, and it was like, oh yeah, if you add in who made the picture, then you can get rich results on your images. And I was like, we make all of our own pictures, so I will just add that the picture was created by us. And I did that, and I was talking about this at at the Women in Tech SEO thing. We did that, and then you get your images in the enhancements report, and we saw an uplift on our images straight away, like pretty much within a week. So like take that home, do that. It's super quick, particularly if you're from a team that's already making your own images. Like you have a graphic design team and they make your OG image or whatever it is, your header image. Absolutely do that. So yeah, don't panic. Do take it as a potential opportunity to like invest in some new stuff, try some new stuff. So yeah, validate. And number 4, validate and improve your pages by type. If you're doing one, if you're improving one element, like try to improve it by type. So try making improvements to the template. This will save you time and also increase the impact of your schema markup. So definitely do that. You might need a dev for this. If you're on a self build, you might need to like just try a few different things. If you're using an off the shelf like Wix, for instance, we have a few different ways where you can add in your own schema, so you can try a few things, but you can do them by folder, which is super useful. And then schedule regular times to review both schema errors and warnings, but also to go through like the rich results gallery and just see if there's anything new, if anything's changed, because not everybody's going to hear every little bit of news about schema markup, because not all of us are those kinds of schema nerds. But do go in and check, because they're constantly adding new types. And yeah, there's like over 1,000 different things that are being categorized in Schema all the time, and they've got some great documentation at schema.org.
Thank you. I feel like I've learned loads and loads and loads of things today. It's definitely, it's like, oh yes, I know how to do schema. Yes, I could do this. And now I'm like, I really need to check that out. I need to work out how to nest everything. I need to try some new schema types. I want to see if I can, it's like, oh, okay. She squirrels herself away and does schema for 3 months for, and schema and nothing but schema. So if our listeners are thinking, hey, I love this schema shizzle, I can't get enough of it and I want to know more. Obviously, you've given us lots of resources there, but if they want to go to the sort of, if it's like, all right, I need to go to the horse's mouth, I need to go, and where do I need to go? It's you. Are you the horse? You're the horse. So apart from you being a horse, where should they go to?
Well, it might behoove you to visit. It's terrible. You laughed at it though. You laughed, Claire. You laughed. Okay, so to trot on over to the Wix SEO Learning Hub, where you'll also find the amazing Claire, and you can see my article on schema markup validation. It is there's a lot of detail in it. I really went into it on this one because it's an important topic that I care very deeply about. Which is completely true.
Who knew?
I know. So okay. So yeah. So yeah. Go to that web page if you've already like started schema and you're doing schema. I cannot recommend enough. BrightLocal has some great schema template articles within the blog. I referenced it to someone else just this week, so highly recommend that. If you also want to hear from me about how to get started with schema markup and some of the sort of like mission critical things, I also have an article on the Moz blog that's a few years old now, but is still pretty good. I'm not gonna lie. There's a blog called The Strategic Value of Structured Data Markup for SMEs, which is a lovely roll of the tongue kind of title. Yeah, exactly. So do check that one out. So between those resources, I think you should be off to a flying start. I would also highly recommend, if you are a Wix user, checking out some of the tools that we have for schema markup within the CMS, both within the builder pages, but also within Velo. So Velo has a lot of great stuff for schema markup as well.
Well, that sounds absolutely fabulous. There's enough reading to get you through your next 2-week summer break or whatever. You just crack right on with that. So
yeah,
Crystal, thank you very, very much for coming along today.
Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure. I can hang out with you all the time, which you're more than aware of because we giggle and hang out all the time.
I think we should just do this forever. This is how it should be. So yeah. Thank you to the lovely Crystal Carter, who you can find if people want to check out more about you. They can see you in all those places, but are you very active anywhere, socially, not in real life?
So I have previously been very active on Twitter. Twitter is very strange at the moment, but my Twitter handle there is Crystal on the web. And also I am starting to become a LinkedIn person, I suppose.
Wow.
So I know it's that they've gotten there. So I'm on LinkedIn as well, under Crystal J Carter. People always ask me about the J and I say, stop asking questions. It's just that is a search engine optimization because there are lots of other people called Crystal Carter, of whom I follow actually. It's fun, to find somebody with your same name and just follow them on LinkedIn. It's super fun.
But are they you? Maybe you'll never know.
Oh, who am I?
Ooh.
Really?
Ooh.
So yeah, I'm there. I'm also on the Wix SEO Learning Hub, and I also have a website which is on Wix, which is crystalcarterseo.com.
Lovely. Thank you again, and a big thank you to all of our listeners and watchers. And just a little reminder to please subscribe to the podcast wherever you consume it, because then you will know when we have a new episode. Hopefully you have listened and enjoyed, and if so, please leave us a review and remember to share the podcast with your friends or even enjoy it together. Why not? That would make a lovely evening for everyone. So I'm just looking forward to seeing everyone next time on Adventures in Local Marketing. Goodbye.